In the year 1295, three men stumbled into the city of Venice. They were dressed in rags, worn down by hardship, and claimed to have been traveling the world for 26 years. Their stories sounded like absolute lunacy. They claimed they had spent decades serving the wealthiest monarch on the planet. They talked about strange black stones pulled from the earth that burned for heat, nuts larger than a man's head, and an empire that used printed paper in place of gold. The people of Venice listened to the youngest of the three men, Marco Polo, and immediately decided he was a liar. Because his tales were so full of massive numbers, they mockingly nicknamed him Marco Millions. The mockery did not fade. Soon after his death, Polo actually became a popular comic figure at Venetian carnivals, a man dressed up like a clown to amuse the crowds with his gross exaggerations. We have to ask how a man who accurately documented one of the most advanced empires on Earth ended up as a punchline. Why was society so quick to turn a factual reality into a legendary fiction? 3 years after returning to Venice, Polo found himself locked in a Genoese jail as a prisoner of war. To pass the time, he dictated his travels to an assistant, producing the most famous travel book in literature. Historian Will Durant analyzes these writings as primary evidence, applying a rigorous scholarly lens to what was once dismissed as pure fiction. Durant notes the skepticism Polo faced came down to geography. 13th century Europeans lived in a localized world, centered on the Mediterranean, with no frame of reference for the landmass stretching to China. To reach the Khan, Polo's party spent years marching overland, traversing the vast expanse of the Gobi Desert. This 14th century illustration maps out the exact kind of massive camel caravan required to survive this journey. Traveling this route demanded highly organized logistical trains, capable of enduring extreme climates for months at a time. When Polo returned, his audience rejected his stories because their geographic imagination was simply too small to comprehend the distances he had survived. This chart compares the size of 13th century Venice to Cambaluc, the city we know today as Peking. Polo reported that Cambaluc alone had 12 suburbs that completely dwarfed the European cities of his era. The economic data he provided was just as staggering. Polo documented a relentless commercial engine where 1,000 loads of raw silk entered the city gates every single day to be woven into clothing for the inhabitants. Then there was the architecture. Polo described a central palace wrapped in marble walls, accessed by sprawling marble steps, and topped with a roof of brilliantly colored tiles. He noted the chambers were fitted with transparent glazed windows, a luxury virtually unknown in his home country. Polo was not fabricating these metrics to feed his own ego. He was utilizing the only mathematical terms he had to quantify a civilization operating on a scale entirely foreign to the Western world. Fast forward to the year 1324. Polo is 70 years old, lying on his deathbed in Venice, surrounded by his closest friends. This illuminated manuscript page represents the text that caused him a lifetime of mockery. Knowing his death is imminent, his friends plead with him to finally retract the statements in his book and save his eternal soul from damnation. Polo listens to their pleas. Then, with characteristic stubbornness, he gives them his final answer. I have not told half of what I saw. Will Durant's essay, Marco Polo Visits Kublai Khan, captures the final defense of a visionary fighting to protect his legacy from the skepticism of his peers. The history of Marco Polo demonstrates a harsh reality. When confronted with a truth that shatters their limited worldview, society will often choose to invent a clown.